At dawn, Venezuela sent 4 warships toward an American destroyer not to fight, but to test the patience of the most powerful navy on Earth. At 5:17 a.m., the USS Gravely caught 4 fast-moving contacts slicing through the Caribbean darkness at 31 knots and climbing. 4. Venezuelan patrol ships, tight formation, zero communication. In a heartbeat, silence turned into calculation. Steel doors slammed shut, stations manned, engines roared to full power. The ship's deck trembled under the rising hum of machinery, and every sailor felt it the shift from routine to confrontation. No one shouted. Orders came low and cold. The 5-inch gun aligned with the horizon, the Sea Whiz turrets came alive, their barrels catching the faint glow of dawn. What began as a quiet patrol was now seconds from escalation, a collision of intent and restraint, and in that frozen moment before sunrise, even the sea seemed to hold its breath. At 5:17 a.m., the stillness over the southern Caribbean shattered. Deep inside the Combat Information Center of the USS Gravely, a sharp tone cut through the morning hum radar contact. 4 unidentified surface tracks, bearing 242 degrees, moving fast, 30 knots and rising. The watch officer didn't even need to call it twice. The order came out like instinct. Condition 3. Set and man all key stations. Within seconds, steel came alive. Doors sealed. Boots struck metal grating, and voices echoed down the narrow corridors. On the bridge, the captain stood motionless, eyes fixed on the SPY-1D radar scope. 4 returns, tight formation, low radar cross-section. Too clean to be civilian. Range? 14 nautical miles, sir, closing. Below deck, the engineers brought the LM-2500 turbines to full standby. Power surged through the destroyer's 155-meter frame, every system shifting from watch mode to combat readiness. On the forward deck, the 5-inch Mark 45 Mod 4 gun rotated 6 degrees southwest, not to fire, but to speak without words. A silent signal in steel. We see you. In combat control, the Aegis displays lit up like a digital storm. Tracks labeled Sierra 1 through 4. Flag data returned Venezuelan. The same signatures detected near Curaçao 2 days ago, after a suspected arms convoy went dark. Coincidence? Not likely. No alarm screamed, no one shouted. Just the low hum of machinery and the distant pulse of radar. The sea outside was black glass, calm and deceptive. On every deck, sailors froze mid-task, listening to the unspoken rhythm that meant something serious was unfolding. Then, through the static of the intercom, the captain's voice cut clear and steady. Maintain heading, eyes on the southwest quadrant. And just like that, the quiet professionalism of the U.S. Navy turned into controlled tension. No explosions, no warning flares, just the slow tightening of a line drawn 16 nautical miles off the Venezuelan coast. In the next 3 minutes, that line would be tested, and nobody on board could predict how far it would bend before it broke. By 5:20 a.m., the calm sea had turned into geometry and intent. 4 Venezuelan patrol boats tightened their wedge formation, now only 8.4 nautical miles out, closing fast at 32 knots. Their wakes slashed through the dark like blades. On the USS Gravely's bridge, the air had changed. No words, no panic, just that quiet, electric tension that sailors know too well. Contacts accelerating. CPA 4.8 nautical miles, the surface tracker reported. The captain didn't raise his voice. Weapons, visible posture only. Hold fire. Up on deck. Steel shifted again. The Mark 45 Mod 4 gun completed its silent rotation, 9 degrees southwest. Barrel lowered a fraction. A gesture, not a threat. Down below, the Sea Whiz CIWS turrets powered up, the whine of hydraulic motors echoing through the hull. That sound alone, low, metallic, alive, could make any approaching pilot think twice. Inside combat control, the Aegis system fused every return into one coherent image. 4 fast movers, hull length 27 meters each. Heat signatures surging past 95 degrees Celsius. No heavy weapons visible, but radar activity increasing. The SLQ-32V3 suite began intercepting narrowband pulses, frequency hopping, short bursts, classic Venezuelan Navy tactics for radar masking. Someone out there knew exactly what they were doing. Then came the voice from the electronic warfare officer. Possible target illumination detected bearing 243. The captain's answer came like steel on calm water. Acknowledge. No lock-on response. Maintain control. Outside, the Caribbean horizon bled from black to deep blue. Sunlight touching the sea just enough to reveal the silhouette's four hulls, now within 6 nautical miles, heading straight for Gravely's starboard beam. Every man on deck could see them. Every heartbeat matched the rumble of turbines below. And then, the next order, launch Razor 22. From the flight deck, the MH-60R Seahawk unfolded its rotor. Blades, engines screaming into the dawn. Within 60 seconds it lifted off, banking south, sensors online, FLIR pod glowing like a second Sunday. From the sky, it caught what the radar couldn't faces. Crew. Motion. Venezuela wasn't backing off. They were closing for a message. This wasn't a drill anymore. This was a live test of patience, power, and precision. A contest between silence and escalation. And here's the question, sailors. If you were on that bridge, watching 4 fast boats slice toward your ship at dawn, would you hold steady, or would you show strength? Because what happened next, at 5:26 a.m., would decide whether the Caribbean stayed quiet or caught fire. At 5:26 a.m., the MH-60R Razor 22 cut through the upper haze like a silver dart, engines howling against the dawn. From 1,300 feet, its MX-20 multispectral turret locked on to the Venezuelan formation 4 boats, each roughly 28 meters long. Painted dark gray, with faint hull numbers barely visible under the spray. Their wakes formed a perfect V, closing in at 31 knots. The pilots didn't speak. They didn't have to. The pattern said everything: discipline, intent, and precision that didn't belong to smugglers. Below, the USS Gravely's Aegis combat system pulsed in sync with the helicopter feed. Data streamed across the CIC range: bearing, velocity, thermal output, signal strength. The electronic warfare suite intercepted short-range encrypted bursts transmitting at 10-second intervals. Origin traced to a Venezuelan naval command post near La Orquilla Island, 152 kilometers to the east. That meant coordination. This wasn't a spontaneous encounter. It was staged. EW reports multiband emission spike at 243 degrees. A voice called out from the CIC. The captain's reply came immediately. Copy. Defensive posture only. No active lock. On the surface, the sea reflected the rising sun like liquid glass. Through binoculars, the boats now appeared hulls shimmering in the glare, silhouettes sharp against the horizon. Their decks were clean, but one carried a rear-mounted sensor mast, possibly an electro-optical tracker. Another showed faint heat plumes near the bow, a portable launcher frame or decoy system. They weren't armed to fight. They were armed to provoke. Inside, Gravely, tension was physical. Every screen glowed amber, every operator leaning forward as though gravity had shifted toward the threat. The LM-2500 turbines hummed at 96% power, ready to push 9,000 tons of warship through the water if the order came. At 5:29, the range dropped below 5 nautical miles, the invisible line where training meets reality. The Seahawk's FLIR feed showed crewmen aboard the Venezuelan lead vessel, standing at their rails, cameras raised, filming. A message without words. The captain didn't flinch. Maintain heading. Record everything. And for the next 90 seconds, the sea became a silent mirror, reflecting 2 nations staring at each other through lenses, sensors, and restraint. By 5:31 a.m., the confrontation crossed from silence into speech. 4 Venezuelan patrol boats, now at 4.3 nautical miles, held perfect alignment off Gravely's starboard beam. The lead vessel's wake flared white, its engines screaming past 3,200 revolutions per minute, heat blooms painting the sky in infrared. On the destroyer's bridge, the captain leaned over the console, eyes steady. "Broadcast," he said. The communications officer keyed the mic. "Venezuelan naval vessels, this is United States warship, Gravely, operating in international waters. You are closing distance at high speed. Alter course immediately." The message went out in English first, then in Spanish. For 11 long seconds, nothing came back, only static, and the faint hum of ocean wind. Then, through the interference, a reply cracked through the net, thick with accent and anger. "United States vessel, you are approaching our Bolivarian security zone. Identify your mission." On the bridge, nobody moved. The captain gave one slow nod. Transmit response. "Venezuelan naval vessels, our position is legal under international law. Maintain separation. As the words echoed, the ship's 5-inch Mark 45 turret adjusted 5 degrees east, visible from the Venezuelan helmsman's view. The twin Sea Whiz turrets tilted slightly, barrels catching the rising sun, gleaming symbols of readiness, not aggression. A message written in motion. We see you. Don't cross the line. Below deck, CIC reported new readings. The Venezuelan radars had spiked to 12 kilowatts, a brief surge consistent with active fire control calibration. Not a lock-on, but close enough to make every operator's pulse quicken. The Aegis system flagged the alert in amber, the color between peace and war. One sailor in the gunnery station whispered under his breath, "If they push 1 more mile, we hold," came the quiet reply from his officer. Outside, the sea shimmered gold. The range tightened to 3.9 nautical miles. Both sides fully visible now. Cameras rolling on every deck. Even the Seahawk circling above, catching the standoff frame by frame. And then, just before 5:33, the Venezuelan lead boat eased back its throttle. A change so small it barely rippled the sea, but on the Gravely's bridge, every man felt it. The first hint that restraint might still win the morning. By 5:38 a.m., tension had crystallized into a standoff no training could fully prepare for. The 4 Venezuelan boats held their position like chess pieces frozen mid-move 3.7 nautical miles off Gravely's starboard beam. Their engines rumbled at low idle, exhaust drifting across the water in faint gray plumes. From above, Razor 22 circled at 1,500 feet, its sensors recording every motion, every reflection off the hulls below. Inside the Combat Information Center, the digital picture was perfect and unnerving. The Aegis grid tracked 4 separate radar emissions, each bouncing against Gravely's surface array. Every return, every echo, every decibel of radio frequency interference told the same story. Someone was testing the system, learning how close they could come before the United States Navy reacted. Contact speed steady at 20 knots, the tracker reported. Copy, said the captain. Log continuous intercept. Keep sensors live. The ship's SLQ-32V3 suite began pulling the signals apart. Frequency drift, pulse repetition, modulation depth. The analysts would later count over 1,900 microtransmissions in a span of just 7 minutes, more than any prior gray zone encounter in the sector. It wasn't random noise, it was mapping. On the surface, sailors lined the decks, motionless under the glow of red night lights. The sea was quiet, but every man could feel the pressure vibrating through the hull, a kind of mechanical heartbeat shared by steel and human nerve. Then, at 5:42, the Venezuelan formation shifted again. 2 boats slowed to 18 knots, turning parallel to Gravely's course. The other 2 drifted slightly behind, forming a mirrored escort line. No words over radio, no radar lock, just calculated proximity close enough to provoke, legal enough to deny. Up on the bridge, the captain watched through binoculars as one of the patrol craft's crews lifted a long-range camera toward the destroyer's deck. A photo, a symbol, a claim. He lowered the binoculars. "Maintain heading," he said quietly. At 5:46, the lead vessel peeled away, throttling east toward the Venezuelan coast. One by one, the rest followed. The tension didn't fade, it simply bled into silence. The USS Gravely held course, turbines steady, logging every bite of the encounter. In 45 minutes of restraint, they had proven something simple yet unspoken, that dominance isn't always measured in firepower but in control. By 6 a.m., the Caribbean had gone still again. The sun climbed low over the eastern horizon, painting the steel deck of the USS Gravely in amber light. The smell of salt and turbine exhaust hung in the air, the scent of power and patience. On the flight deck, the MH-60R Razor 22 descended through the haze, rotors kicking up a mist of seawater before touching down. Its mission log read 1 hour 02 minutes airborne, 43 minutes in direct observation, 0 rounds fired. Inside the Combat Information Center, analysts worked in silence, their screens a mosaic of data. 2,184 signal recordings, 94 minutes of video, and 1.2 terabytes of radar telemetry were queued for transmission to U.S. Southern Command. Every byte mattered because this wasn't just a maritime encounter. It was evidence of intent. Venezuela hadn't attacked. They had measured, mapped, and tested the U.S. Navy's threshold for reaction. "Final range before withdrawal?" the captain asked. 3.6 nautical miles, sir. Closest contact lasted 27 seconds. "Good," he said quietly. "Send it up the chain." Above the bridge, the SPY-1DV arrays spun down to standby, their once relentless hum fading to a low whisper. The destroyer's LM-2500 turbines eased to cruising power 68% output as the ship resumed her patrol route. To the untrained eye, it looked like nothing had happened. But every sailor aboard knew otherwise. The line had been tested, the reaction recorded, and the message delivered. At 6:12, Washington received the initial sitrep, controlled friction event, no escalation, probable gray zone probe. Within the hour, it would circulate across the Pentagon, then to analysts at the Office of Naval Intelligence. The conclusions would be debated for weeks, maybe months. But for the crew of Gravely, the meaning was immediate. They had stood within minutes of a possible firefight and walked away without crossing the line. In an ocean filled with politics, censors, and pride, that restraint was their weapon. The sea lay quiet again, but the silence wasn't peace. It was a pause. Because in waters like these, every sunrise resets the game. And next time the question won't be how close they come, but whether anyone looks away first. The USS Gravely continued on her course, a gray silhouette against the rising sun, no smoke, no battle scars, just quiet strength cutting through the Caribbean. 47 minutes, 4 foreign hulls, and one unbroken line of discipline. That morning proved a truth older than war itself. Sometimes the greatest show of power is choosing not to pull the trigger. Every radar ping, every turn of the propeller, every decision made in those tense minutes now lives as a lesson in restraint, the kind that prevents headlines and saves lives. But this story isn't over. The Caribbean remains a chessboard, and every move writes the next chapter. So tell me, if you were standing on that bridge, with the horizon closing fast, would you have held your fire or made the first move? Comment your answer below, and subscribe for the next encounter at sea.